Claude responded. Some men spend a lifetime bracing for the phone call that tells them a child is gone. Some men spend a lifetime bracing for the phone call that tells them a child is gone. I spent 3 days bracing for the exact opposite, a phone that wouldn't ring at all. And by the time it was over, I understood something about my daughter. I wish to God I never had to learn. You want to know what it feels like to build a life for someone, and then watch them try to erase you from it. Let me tell you. It feels like standing in your own garage at midnight, staring at a phone with no missed calls on it, wondering if the girl you raised is even still your daughter anymore. That was me. 63 years old, a grown man with calloused hands, standing under a bare bulb, refusing to believe what was staring me right in the face. My name is Walter Kessler. Folks around Lincoln, Nebraska know me as the man who built Kessler Steel Fabrication from a 2-bay pole barn into a 140-employee operation that ships structural beams to half the Midwest. I built that company with my back, before I ever built it with my brain. My own mother raised 4 of us alone on a waitress's wages, after my father decided fatherhood wasn't for him. Nobody ever paid for a single thing I owned growing up. Nobody co-signed anything for me. So, when my daughter Renee was born, I made myself a promise in that hospital hallway in Lincoln, the same kind of promise I imagine a lot of you have made. This girl will never know what it feels like to go without. I kept that promise for 29 years. And then, on a humid Wednesday in June, that promise turned into the worst week of my life. Welcome back, family. Settle in, grab your coffee, and remember this while you watch. The people in this story had every chance to treat me like a father instead of a wallet. They chose the wallet. Hit that like button and tell me in the comments where you're tuning in from tonight, because I read every single one of them. It started, of all things, with an insurance renewal. Boring paperwork, the kind you skim once and forget. Renee's house, a beautiful 4-bedroom colonial out in Brentwood, just outside Nashville, needed my signature to renew the umbrella policy that sat on top of her mortgage. I'm the reason she qualified for that loan in the first place. My credit, my signature, my name, sitting quietly underneath the whole structure, like a support beam nobody ever thinks to thank. The renewal deadline was 6 days out. Before I signed anything, I needed one number from her, an updated appraisal figure the insurance company wanted confirmed. 30 seconds on the phone. That's all I needed. I called her from my office on a Monday morning, half watching one of my welders run a bead down a support column through the shop window, straight to voicemail. Fine, I told myself. She's got 2 kids and a husband who travels for work. She's busy. I left a message. Hey, sweetheart, it's Dad. Got the insurance renewal here. Need one number from you before I sign off. Call me when you get a chance. Love you. Back to work. By Tuesday afternoon, nothing. I called again. Voicemail again. That's when the first little needle of unease worked its way under my skin. Renee doesn't always call me back same day, but she doesn't go a full day without at least a text. Never has. Not since she was 16 and I made her promise she would. So I called my son-in-law, Marcus, figuring he'd know if she'd lost her phone or was buried in something at work. Voicemail. Him too? I told myself it was nothing. People get busy. I left another message, trying to keep the worry out of my voice. Marcus, it's Walter. Need to reach Renee about the house insurance before the deadline. Give me a call when you can. My wife, Donna, noticed something was wrong with me that night at supper. 41 years of marriage teaches a woman to read a man's face better than he can read it himself. You've barely touched your pot roast, she said, nodding at the plate. What's eating you, Walter? Renee's not answering, I said. Neither is Marcus. Since yesterday. Donna waved it off the way wives do. They're busy, Walter. 2 kids under 10, and that big house. She'll call when she calls. She was probably right. I told myself she was right. So why did I feel like somebody had reached into my stomach and started twisting? Day 3 is when it stopped being an annoyance and became something closer to fear. The insurance deadline was now 48 hours out. I called Renee 9 times that day. 9. I called Marcus 6 times. Every single one died in a voicemail box. I stopped eating supper. I stopped sleeping past 3 in the morning. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw ambulances. I saw a Tennessee state trooper standing on my porch with his hat in his hands, and I swear to you I could hear the words before anybody ever said them out loud. You buried your own father's absence once already, Walter. You know exactly how fast this world can take somebody from you without so much as a warning. That night I sat on the edge of the bed at 1:30 in the morning, phone in my hand, thumb hovering over Renee's name for what felt like the 100th time. Donna sat up behind me. Walter, come to bed. Something's wrong, and you know it. My voice cracked in a way it hadn't cracked since my own mother's funeral. 3 days, Donna. Neither one of them. That's not busy. That's not normal for our girl. Maybe their phones broke. Maybe they're on some trip. Both phones? For 3 straight days, with 2 kids in that house. I turned and looked at her, and I watched the same cold drop hit her face that had been sitting in my gut for 2 days straight. Pack a bag, I said. We're flying down there. Something is wrong, Donna. I can feel it in my chest. She didn't argue. That's the gift of 41 years together. You learn which fights are worth having and which ones you just get up and start packing for. We booked the first flight out of Lincoln the next morning. I remember standing at the gate watching the flat gray Nebraska sky disappear behind glass and thinking this might be the worst overreaction of my life, or it might save my daughter's life, and I genuinely did not know which one it was going to turn out to be. Donna held my hand through the whole flight. Neither of us said much. What do you say? Hope our daughter isn't lying somewhere hurt. Doesn't exactly make small talk with the flight attendant handing out ginger ale. I ran through every scenario a father's brain can invent at 30,000 feet. A car wreck on I-40, a break-in at the house. Marcus's little Cessna he liked to fly on weekends, going down somewhere in the hills. None of it prepared me for what was actually waiting on the other side of that front door. We landed in Nashville a little after 1 in the afternoon. That thick Tennessee heat hit us the second we stepped off the jet bridge, the kind of wet heat 2 Nebraska people never quite get used to, no matter how many times we visit. I rented a Suburban at the counter, tossed our one bag in the back, and pointed us toward Brentwood. The whole drive, Donna kept saying the same thing on a loop, like she was trying to talk herself into believing it. They're fine, Walter. There's some boring explanation for this. Then why won't either one of them pick up a phone in 3 days? I said, gripping that wheel tighter than I needed to. 15 calls between the two of us. Not one text back. Not one. She went quiet after that. I think some part of her already knew, the same way some part of me already knew, that a boring explanation wasn't what was waiting for us at the end of that street. Renee's house rose up at the end of a cul-de-sac, lined with crepe myrtles, white brick, and black shutters, the kind of place that made a Lincoln Steel man feel a little out of his depth in his own rental car. I noticed a rental van with Tennessee plates parked crooked in the driveway, but I didn't think much of it. We walked up that brick path, and my hand was actually shaking when I raised it to knock. 29 years of fatherhood, and I was standing outside my own daughter's front door like a man about to identify a body at the county morgue. And that's when I heard it. Music. Laughter. Loud, easy, celebratory laughter drifting through the front windows. Streamers were taped across the porch railing, fluttering every time the ceiling fan on the porch kicked on. That is not the sound of tragedy, I thought, and for half a second relief flooded through me so hard my knees nearly buckled. Thank God. Thank God she's okay. I knocked. The music dipped low. Footsteps came toward the door. The latch clicked, and it swung open to reveal my daughter, Renee, a drink sweating in her hand, a grin frozen halfway between surprise and something colder, something I hadn't seen on her face since she was 17, and I caught her sneaking back in past curfew. That grin didn't stay confused for long. It curdled into something else entirely. What are you two doing here? Not Dad. Not Mom. Not is everything okay? What are you two doing here? Like Donna and I were a couple of strangers selling something she'd have to figure out how to get rid of. I tried to keep my voice steady, even though my chest felt like it was folding in on itself. I've been calling for 3 days, Renee. I thought something had happened to you. Donna pushed past me a step, both hands flying up to her mouth, and for 1 second, just one, I watched 29 years of motherhood pour out of her all at once. Oh, thank God. She gasped. Baby, you're okay. We've been calling and calling. We thought something terrible had happened to you and the kids. Renee cut her off before she even finished the sentence, rolling her eyes so hard her whole head tilted back with it. We didn't answer because we didn't want to talk to you, she said, voice flat and sharp. Dad, you and Mom hover over every single thing in our lives. We have our own family now. Stay in your lane. Stay in Nebraska. 4 words. Stay in your lane. I've taken a lot of hits in 63 years. A steel beam that got away from a crane operator once. My own father's absence for 56 straight years. None of it landed the way those 4 words landed standing on that porch. I stood there with streamers snapping gently in the breeze behind her head, like the whole house was mocking me, and I genuinely did not have a single word ready. 29 years. Every soccer game, every scraped knee, every 2 a.m. fever, and this is the return on the investment. Before I could find my footing, Marcus appeared in the doorway holding a spatula, grease-stained apron still on, and groaned the second he saw us. Actually groaned, like we were an errand he thought he'd already finished. Are you serious, right now? He set the spatula down on the porch railing hard enough to rattle a nearby drink glass. You couldn't let us have one night to ourselves? I felt something steady itself inside my chest right then. Whatever fear had been eating me alive for 3 days was turning into something else. Maybe not anger yet, maybe just clarity. Son, I said, keeping my voice level, your insurance renewal is due in 2 days. I'm the guarantor on that loan. I needed to verify the appraisal number before I signed off, so you two don't lose coverage on this house. I called Renee, then I called you, and neither one of you answered for 3 straight days. Marcus let out a short laugh, with no real humor in it, just contempt wearing humor's jacket. Oh, here we go. The rescue mission, he said, shaking his head slow, like he was talking down to a kid instead of the man who still co-signed the loan on his roof. You think because your name's on some paperwork you get to track our every move? This is exactly why we bought a house 4 states away from you and Donna. We wanted distance from the constant checking in. 4 states away, on purpose. To get away from me. I flew 1,000 miles, because I loved my daughter too much to sit still. She'd built a life 1,000 miles away because, apparently, she loved us too little to stay close. Renee nodded along like her husband had delivered something profound, then leaned back against the doorframe, drink still in hand. Exactly, she said. You always use money and fixing things to keep tabs on us and feel important, Dad. Marcus makes plenty now. We don't need you hovering over us acting like some kind of hero every time a bill comes due. She paused. And here's the part that really cracked something open in my chest. We saw your calls, Dad. All of them. We let them go on purpose. We wanted to see how long it would actually take you to get the hint and leave us alone. Purposefully. Not, we were busy. Not, our phones broke. Purposefully. For 3 days, I'd sat awake, picturing every possible danger my daughter could be in, and the entire time she was sitting in that house, watching my name light up her screen and deciding, on purpose, to let her own father suffer, just to teach me a lesson. That's when a young woman I didn't recognize stepped up beside Renee, holding a glass of champagne, radiating the kind of smug boredom you only ever see on reality television. Ugh, she said, glancing between us. Is this the overbearing dad we keep hearing about? No offense, but you guys are a lot. Donna blinked at her, completely lost. I'm sorry, who exactly are you? The girl smiled wider and gestured behind her toward the living room, where I now noticed a banner strung across the fireplace mantel. Congratulations, Marcus Regional VP. We're celebrating Marcus's promotion tonight, which you're currently interrupting by showing up unannounced, she said. Kind of awkward, honestly. Unannounced. Interrupting. I heard the words land, but for a second, they didn't fully register. The way your brain sometimes refuses a package it already knows is going to hurt too much to open. Our son-in-law had been promoted, and we found out about it standing on our own daughter's porch, being told we were ruining the celebration. 41 years of marriage, and I had never once seen Donna's face do what it did in that moment, like somebody had reached barehanded into her chest. I want to pause here, because this is the part where people who've never lived it say, Walter, just walk away, don't make a scene. And believe me, part of me was already halfway back to the rental in my head. But another part of me, the part that flew 1,000 miles, because I genuinely believed my daughter might be in danger, that part needed to understand. How does a father go from he's calling because he's terrified to he's suffocating us without a single real conversation in between? I found out real quick. That was the moment that actually broke something in me. I'd tell Donna later that night on the plane it wasn't the insults. It wasn't the eye rolls or that girl's smug little smile. It was knowing they'd watched my name light up their phones for 3 straight days, knew exactly how worried I was, and chose to let us suffer. That's not independence. That's cruelty wearing a family name. Behind that heartbreak, though, there was something else. Something Donna hadn't said out loud yet, but I knew exactly what she was thinking because I was thinking it too. Sitting in our fireproof safe back home in Lincoln was her late mother's cameo brooch, wrapped in tissue paper for 11 years, waiting for the day Donna would pass it down to Renee for her 40th birthday, a tradition in her family going back 3 generations. And here, Donna was, standing on a porch, being treated like an intruder, at a party celebrating a promotion, in a house that our signature had made possible. I didn't yell. I've thought about that a lot since. Whether I should have raised my voice, whether some part of them needed to see their father break the way they'd just broken their mother right there on that porch. But that's not who I am. Nobody taught me how to handle a moment like that either, so I had to figure it out on my own, same as everything else. I looked at my daughter and the man she'd married, standing in a doorway framed by a life my signature had quietly built underneath them, completely blind to it, treating her own mother like something to sweep off the welcome mat. I didn't argue. I just reached over, took my crying wife's hand, and turned back toward the rental car. Behind us, I heard that girl mutter something to Renee. I didn't catch it, and honestly, I didn't need to. The tone said plenty. They wanted to be left alone. And by the following week, they were going to get exactly what they'd asked for. If you've been with me a while, you already know what's coming. Drop a comment telling me you see it too, and hit that like button before we keep going. The drive to the airport felt longer than the whole flight down. Donna sat beside me, silent, tears running steady down her face without a single sound. I'd seen my wife cry plenty in 41 years, at her father's funeral, at both kids' graduations, once during a life insurance commercial I still tease her about, but I'd never seen her cry like that, hollow, like something inside her had simply quit running. Somewhere around the airport exchange, she finally spoke, staring out at the passing traffic like it might answer her. 11 years, she said quietly. I kept that brooch wrapped up for 11 years, Walter. I used to imagine giving it to her, telling her the story about my mother wearing it to her own wedding during the Depression, with nothing else nice to her name. Her hands shook in her lap. Not this. Not being told we're interrupting something. The flight home was the quietest 2 hours of my life, and I've sat through plenty of quiet hours. Donna watched the clouds the whole way, tears slipping down every few minutes like her body had simply given up fighting them. I held her hand and said nothing, because what was there to say? It'll be fine? It wasn't fine. They didn't mean it in a heated moment. They'd told us themselves they'd planned it, watched the calls roll in, and chosen silence deliberately. They're just going through something. 29 and 31 years old is not going through something. That's two grown adults making a decision in broad daylight with a party guest laughing along in the background. Somewhere over Missouri, staring at the seat back in front of me, something shifted permanently in my chest, quiet but final, like a door closing somewhere deep in a house you thought you knew every room of. I'd given my daughter everything I never had growing up. Every recital, every scraped knee, every bit of security. A kid without a real father dreams about giving his own someday. And somehow, in giving her all of it, I'd raised a woman who looked at me standing on her porch like I was the villain of her story. By the time we touched down in Lincoln, something in me had already made a decision, even before I had words for it. I just knew the man walking off that plane wasn't the same one who'd boarded terrified for his daughter's life 6 hours earlier. Whatever was left of that man was about to make a phone call his daughter would remember for the rest of her life. They wanted to be left alone, so I decided to leave them alone completely, legally, financially, every single thread. And by the time they understood what that actually meant, it would already be too late to undo it. Nobody tells you that heartbreak waits. It lets you walk through your own front door first, lets you set your bags down, lets you believe, for one merciful second, that the worst of it might already be behind you. Then it takes your wife's legs right out from under her. We walked into our house on Sherwood Avenue a little after 10 that night, and the quiet hit different than it ever had before. 30 years in that house, countless nights coming home from dance recitals and Little League games, every ordinary sound that used to fill those rooms. That night, the silence had teeth. Donna made it 2 steps past the front hall before her knees just gave out, right there on the rug her own mother had given us as a wedding gift, and she cried the way you cry when somebody's died. Not the composed, dignified crying from the porch. The real thing, from somewhere underneath the ribs. I got down on the floor with her. Didn't try to fix anything, which if you know me is close to a miracle, because fixing things is the only language I've ever really spoken fluently. I just held her while she cried into my shoulder, and I let myself ask the question that had been chasing me the whole flight home. Where did we go wrong? I gave her everything I never had. Donna lifted her head, eyes swollen, and said the only thing that made sense that whole night. No, Walter, you didn't turn her into anything. She did that herself. You just handed her a life she never had to work for. And people who never work for something never learn to be grateful for it. I held my wife on that living room floor until almost midnight, and somewhere in there I made myself a promise. The only person who had stood beside me through every version of my life, good, terrified, exhausted, proud, was lying right there in my arms. Our daughter had made her own life clear. So I decided I was going to honor that and spend whatever years I had left loving the one person who'd actually earned every bit of it. We talked most of that night, the kind of talk 41 years of marriage lets you have without needing to explain half of it. We agreed on one thing above everything else. Whatever came next, we'd move together. No solo decisions, no guilt trips that would soften either of us at the wrong moment. By sunrise, we were completely aligned. And Walter Kessler, aligned with his wife, is not a man you want standing between you and a telephone. I called my attorney, Sam Rays, at exactly 8 a.m. He's handled Kessler Steel's contracts for almost 20 years, and he knows the difference between my business voice and something else entirely. This was clearly something else. Walter, he said, you sound like a man who didn't sleep. I need you to pull my name off Renee's mortgage guarantee and the umbrella policy both, I said. Today, before the renewal window closes. There was a pause on the line, the kind a good lawyer gives you when he wants to make sure you're not about to do something you'll regret by lunch. You sure about that? Once that guarantee lapses, the underwriter's system flags it automatically. No grace period on a loan structured like that one. I've never been more sure of anything in my life, I said. He didn't argue further. By 10 that morning, the withdrawal was filed. By early afternoon, it was processed. For the first time in 6 years, there was no Walter Kessler standing quietly behind that mortgage, like a support beam nobody ever thanks. I didn't stop there either. Over the following week, I looked at every other financial thread still tying my name to theirs. Marcus's business truck was on a loan I'd co-signed back when he started his contracting side gig. I called the credit union and formally revoked my collateral backing. The loan got flagged high risk overnight, payment restructured, due in full within 30 days unless he could qualify solo, which, given his numbers, he couldn't. Next, I called our estate attorney about the 529 education accounts I'd been quietly funding for their 2 kids, my grandkids, since the day each one was born. I didn't touch those. Those weren't Renee and Marcus's money to misuse. They were the kids. But I did formally transfer trustee control from myself to an independent trust officer, so no argument down the road could ever touch it or use it as leverage against me. They wanted to be on their own. I decided to let the banks, the underwriters, and reality show them exactly what that meant. They showed up on our porch 19 days later. They didn't have much choice. Nashville had chewed them up fast. Once my name came off that mortgage guarantee, the lender required a full refinance within 30 days that Marcus's income alone couldn't clear, not with his current debt load. They sold the house at a loss just to avoid foreclosure, showing up on record, packed what fit into a U-Haul, and drove 14 hours straight back to Nebraska because Renee's mother-in-law had a spare room and nowhere else made financial sense. They didn't call first. They just pulled that U-Haul right up to our curb on Sherwood Avenue, looking like 2 exhausted strangers wearing the faces of the successful people they'd been 3 weeks earlier. Marcus did the knocking, hard and fast, pale and furious like the door owed him something. I opened it, let them in, sat them down in the same living room where Donna had collapsed weeks before, and let them say whatever they'd driven 14 hours to say. Renee went first, crying before she even crossed the threshold. Real tears this time, not performance, though it took me a minute to remember that real tears don't automatically mean real accountability. How could you do this to us, Dad? We're your family. You're destroying our lives over one bad night. One bad night? I asked, my voice entirely empty of heat. You watched your mother and me call for 3 days straight while we were sick with worry, Renee. You told me yourselves you did it on purpose, to teach me a lesson. Now the world's teaching you one. Her face shifted then, grief curdling fast into something uglier, a desperate scramble for footing. You're just a control freak who can't stand that we don't need you, she said, voice rising, echoing off the hardwood. This is some kind of revenge, because we didn't invite you to one party. I didn't flinch. I don't want to see either of you fail, sweetheart. But you told me you didn't need me hovering, acting like some kind of hero every time life got hard. I'm just honoring what you asked for. If you truly don't need me, then you don't need my name on your mortgage, and Marcus doesn't need my collateral behind his loan. That's not revenge. That's adulthood, same as you demanded. Marcus jumped in, searching for another angle the way a man pats his pockets for keys he already knows aren't there. Your wife would never have let this happen, he said, pivoting hard toward Donna. You're doing this behind her back because you're bitter. That's when Donna stepped in from the kitchen doorway, arms crossed, voice steadier than I'd heard it since that porch in Brentwood. Your father and I are on the same page, Marcus, she said, firm, without a single crack in it. We decided this together. We agreed to honor what you both asked for. Renee, who'd gone quiet, finally cracked. Mom, you can't be serious. I stood, walked over, and put my hand gently on Donna's shoulder. So here we are, I said. We're leaving you alone. Good luck to you both. I watched something in their faces finally understand, really understand, that this wasn't a bluff. It wasn't a father who'd fold the second his daughter cried hard enough in his own living room. I listened to them cry and shift blame for a mess they'd built with their own hands. They tried to make me feel guilty for the refinance, for the sale, for every choice they'd made themselves standing on that porch 3 weeks earlier. But I felt nothing except clarity. These were the same two people who'd stood in a doorway and told me to stay in my lane, who'd broken their mother's heart without so much as a flinch. They didn't want my help when I was offering it freely. They just wanted somebody to blame once they realized they couldn't do it alone. They left that night without another word. I heard the U-Haul door slam, heard the engine fade down Sherwood Avenue, and Donna and I stood in that living room in a silence that, for the first time in 3 weeks, didn't feel like grief. It felt like peace. I went to see Sam Reyes again the following week, and this time it wasn't about a mortgage. I want to rewrite the trust, I told him, sliding my coffee aside to make room for the folder. Completely. He looked up over his glasses, the same careful look he'd given me the day I pulled Renee's guarantee. How completely? If I go first, everything to Donna. If she goes first, everything comes to me. And if we're both gone, I paused. And for the first time in weeks, I felt something settle in my chest instead of tear through it. The grandkids' education accounts stay protected exactly as they are, untouched, for them alone. But the rest of it, the house, the company shares, all of it, goes to the Nebraska Steelworkers Scholarship Fund. Kids of guys who worked the floor their whole lives and never had a father like I tried to be. Kids who'd give anything for a dad who actually shows up. Sam didn't ask me to reconsider. He just nodded, made the note, and got to work. My own father walked out on 4 kids and a waitress's wages, and I swore my daughter would never know that kind of empty. And somehow, in giving her everything I never had, I raised a woman who took a father who showed up completely for granted. Renee doesn't need my money. She's made that abundantly clear. But there are kids in this state right now. Real kids in real trailer parks and rented duplexes, whose fathers work 60 hours a week on a shop floor and never get thanked for it either. My legacy isn't going to the daughter who told me to stay in my lane. It's going to the ones who'd actually give anything to have a father worth calling. Months passed after that. The calls from Renee slowed, then stopped, almost entirely. I heard through Donna's sister that she and Marcus had found a small rental across town. No big house, no fireplace mantle for banners. Just a regular life. The kind most people build slowly and carefully instead of having handed to them. I won't pretend it didn't sting to hear it. It did. Some nights it still does. But every time that ache creeps back in, I remember that porch. I remember stay in your lane. I remember Donna's face falling apart over a brooch that never got its moment, and the ache settles right back down where it belongs. Donna and I sit out on our back porch most evenings now, right around sunset, coffee in hand, watching the sky do its slow fade over the same Lincoln backyard where our daughter once learned to ride a bike. I stayed up half the night putting together. She reached over one evening not too long ago and set her hand on mine, the same way she's done 1,000 times across 41 years, and I looked at her and understood something simple and true. My father left when I was 9 years old. I spent my whole life trying to become the man he never bothered to be. But somewhere along the way, I nearly forgot that the only person I ever truly needed to protect was sitting right there beside me the entire time. My daughter has her own life now. She made that crystal clear, standing in her own doorway in Tennessee. And my wife and I, we still have each other. And it turns out, that's more than enough. If this one hit close to home, hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from tonight. I'll see you in the next one. Claude responded, "Love isn't measured by how much you hand someone, but by whether they still show up when you have nothing left to give them." Love isn't measured by how much you hand someone, but by whether they still show up when you have nothing left to give them. The safest thing you can do for the people you love isn't shielding them from every hard mile. It's making sure they know how to walk one on their own. And the person who stays through your worst nights deserves your best ones, too. A small note for you. This story was written and fictionalized by AI purely for entertainment, though we hope its message about gratitude and family still landed somewhere warm in your heart.